Hola, SAP developers. Welcome to this session, part of the TOEFL 2023 integration track. Before we start, I just want to let you know to please feel free to drop us your questions on the chat window as we will be monitoring it and we will answer your questions there. Also, we will have Q&A at the end. So if we don't answer your questions in the chat, then David will answer them at the end of the session. Now, this is the last session of the integration track, and we'll be talking about event-driven architectures in SAP BTP. Today, we have Davey, who is the lead development architect of SAP Event Broker for SAP Cloud Applications, which is a brand new BTP service just released in August this year. So without any further delay, hola, Davey, over to you.
All right, thanks, Antonio, and thanks everyone for joining. My name is Davey Odom. I'm based out of Boulder, Colorado. I've been with SAP for a bit over 10 years now, and I'm a chief architect there. So with that, let's dive in. So first, just a little bit of the agenda today. It's just a 30-minute quick session. So we'll briefly touch on event-driven architecture. What is it? Why is it important? Then move along to event-driven architecture at SAP, and I'll explain some of the strategy there. And then we'll spend hopefully most of the time on this new SAP Event Broker for SAP Cloud Applications, including explaining what does it do, how do you use it, and I have a demo that I'll show at the end there. So moving right along, event-driven architecture. And I'm just going to scratch the surface here. This is a big topic, which is pretty well known for many, many years in the industry. So don't expect a comprehensive coverage here. There's lots of information out there and other great tracks at Devtoberfest and TechEd to watch for the SAP flavor. But I'll just do a little level setting so we all know we're talking about the same thing. So quickly here, we'll run through a little primer and cover these questions. So first of all, what are events? So we start with an occurrence. So something happened out there in the world. So an order was placed. This is just a statement of fact. To go from occurrence to event, we take this occurrence and we put some context around it and put it in a form that we can use in a software context. So here, this not only was an order was placed, but it was placed by some particular system at a time, for example. And here I show a representation of the event itself for a purchase order creation. This is in a cloud event format, which is an open industry standard, which has emerged over the last handful of years. And SAP has also adopted this standard for their events. And this is an abbreviated version. There's some more fields in a real one, but we can see here there's a type that this was a purchase order created type of event. We can see that the source was coming from some S4 system, tenant XYZ in this case. We can see the time the event was created. And then inside the data or the payload, we can, in this example, just see an ID of the purchase order. Sometimes there's a lot more data or contents inside of that payload as well. So now that we have these events, what do we do with them? What is an event-driven architecture? So, at a high level, every system participating in an event-driven architecture can be an event producer or an event consumer, and typically they're both. As an event producer, the responsibility is just to emit these events or statements of facts as to what happened inside of that system's boundaries. And then out there in the rest of the world, interested parties can subscribe to those events and consume them. So what does that mean in a little more detail? So there's a strong degree of decoupling here. So the communication between these services or systems is decoupled. Events aren't sent to a specific destination. So to contrast this, it's not like a point-to-point API call where you make a synchronous request to some specific target and you get a response. Instead, as already mentioned, you just emit events saying what happened inside of your system. And then the interested consumers can subscribe to those events. And that's typically with a pub sub communication pattern. And lastly, we have an event broker that's acting as an intermediary. It's used between the event producers and event consumers, also playing to that decoupling story. And then quickly, what are just a handful of the high-level benefits that we see from such architectures? And a lot of this is derived from the decoupling aspects, and then some from the qualities of the intermediary or event broker as well. So first here, event producers and event consumers can evolve and be operated independently. Think like microservice paradigms, different teams building different services. They can all be deployed on different schedules. All they need to know are what are the contract of events. And the next one's quite important. Failure of one system won't cascade to other systems. So in a point-to-point kind of architecture, if the downstream or called system starts failing or returning errors, you have to take quite a bit of care to make sure that doesn't have a negative impact on the upstream system. With an event-driven architecture, you get that much more easily out of the box. So this intermediary, the event broker, can act as an elastic buffer. It can absorb spikes in traffic, and related to the failure point above, it can deal with various outages or unplanned downtimes of all the connected systems without negative impacts on the others. Additional subscribers can be added without any impact on an event producer. You don't have to go back to that event producer and wire up another integration to a different system. If it's later added into the landscape, the event producer is already emitting the events. It doesn't even need to know what systems are consuming downstream, or even if there are any. And lastly, we do see typically an increase in resource efficiency. We're removing costly polling operations and also removing redundant point-to-point interactions. And these are really kind of some of the architectural benefits. The business benefits cascade on top of this. Beyond just the resiliency benefits, there's frequently we see opportunities to do more kind of real-time insights and so on. And again, lots of material out there to dig into the details and learn more about it. But we just have a short time here, so we'll move on to what we're doing at SAP with event-driven architecture. And I'll start here with a slide that probably this image is pretty familiar to you. This is a kind of standard corporate strategy slide for SAP and the business technology platform. I'm not going to explain all of it here, but I'll focus on the business technology platform aspect and explain where events come into play in this picture, just in brief, a couple of the points. So along the bottom here, we see these various capabilities, and I'll just highlight a few of them. Events really play a part in all of them, but the most prominent or quickest to take advantage of are in the app dev and automation and integration spaces there. So for app dev and automation, it's a typical case, the most common case, I would say, that customers or partners are responding to things happening inside of the SAP cloud applications. That's a trigger for the extension app or for the workflow, which is being automated. It's triggered by a change in a business object or a business process quite frequently. Those changes, as we saw from earlier, those are well represented and well transmitted in the form of events. So using events as triggers for apps or automated workflows is a very easy, natural fit in bringing a lot of those benefits of the event-driven architecture. The other one is integration. And here this means not only integrating SAP cloud solutions together with each other, but it also means integrating out with the broader world out there. So integrating out with third-party systems or B2B use cases and so on. Events are quite a natural driver there as well. So then moving on now, let's get to the real focus of the talk, the SAP Event Broker for SAP Cloud Applications, or SAP Event Broker for short. And as mentioned in the start, this was released just in August of this year. And here you can see it in the Discovery Center. So quite new, lots to talk about and lots more to come quite soon. And the first thing that may pop into your head if you're familiar with other SAP offerings or other products within the portfolio first are, how does this fit with the rest of the things which I'm already aware of? So let me just first show this strategy slide showing the kind of holistic picture, at least with a focus on the BTP perspective, and hopefully that will make it clear to you. So we have really two main things to be looking at here. On the left, we have the SAP Event Broker, and on the right, we have the SAP Integration Suite product family. So first, on the left side, this is, as it's called here, the SAP Intelligent Enterprise EDA. So this SAP Event Broker is connecting with all of the SAP cloud applications and also serving apps built on BTP by partners or customers. So really the SAP and BTP centric ecosystem served by the Event Broker. But we know most customers do have products other than SAP in their landscapes. There's a lot of third-party solutions out there which also need to be integrated. And as well, a lot of customers still have a heavy on-premise footprint. And this is where the SAP Integration Suite product family comes into the picture. So as it says, the enterprise EDA and hybrid heterogeneous customer landscapes. And there's three capabilities of the Integration Suite which are of interest here in different cases. Two of them are these kind of event broker or message broker technologies, the event mesh and advanced event mesh. And then we also have cloud integration and enterprise integration platform as a service offering, which is providing a whole catalog of adapters to third-party systems and mediation capabilities. And what's key here is this arrow in between the SAP Event Broker and Integration Suite product family. These things are made to interoperate quite well, and they are complementary solutions. So merely key takeaways here are, if you're looking third-party and on-premise, look to that Integration Suite, and when you're tapping in and out of SAP Cloud, you'll be leveraging the SAP Event Broker. So now beyond the strategy perspective, we'll get a little bit more concrete and dive into this SAP Event Broker in some more detail. And first of all, we know that those kind of block diagrams like we looked at earlier really don't capture the whole story. So let me explain some of the key points of the SAP Event Broker and some of the things which aren't captured just by having a box and some arrows. And really here, the main key point to me is that this SAP Event Broker is a kind of ubiquitous event platform for SAP Cloud. So all the business events from the SAP Cloud applications and services are just automatically there on this platform of the SAP Event Broker without you having to do anything. SAP manages the technical connections. So this is something different from the past and different from some of the other offerings. It's not that you're wiring individually all your applications and things together into some specific infrastructure. Rather, this is all just connected for you out of the box. And going along with that, this is a software as a service offering or a serverless offering. So there's no sizing or capacity planning that's required. We are responsible for scaling this with traffic. All you need to know to consume it is that you're interested in some events from SAP Cloud, and you can start consuming. Along with this, we have a centralized administration and control of the event traffic across the SAP landscape. So we pull this together into a central place to give you the kind of enterprise governance and control of data movement that you would expect. And next, the entitlement. So this is entitled for usage automatically with BTP CPEA or pay-as-you-go account. So basically any BTP customer, you have this available to use already without doing anything additional or making any other additional purchases. So this monitoring for the SAP Event Broker is integrated into SAP Cloud ALM, as you would expect from a new SAP Cloud service as well. So moving on from there, beyond having it available, what is the cost? What is the impact on me here? And we meter in transactions, so in blocks of 1 million transactions. And as you can see, the list price for those blocks is really quite low here. 32 to 42 euro cents, depending on the contract type, for these blocks of 1 million transactions. And each inbound or outbound event processed counts as a transaction with that asterisk there about the event size. And if they're larger events, it counts as multiples. And the second point is really the exciting one to me, and hopefully to you as well. The first 75 blocks are free each month to every customer. So that's 75 million events that SAP is giving to you to use for free. And why are we doing this, you may ask? And really, we want to make this integration between the SAP cloud applications really seamless and easy. And more importantly, or equally as importantly, we want to make a really compelling story to build on top of BTP, because we think it's best for you as customers, and also something we have a strong interest in at SAP. So then moving on a little bit as to what's actually there versus the story we're telling. The initial release of the Event Broker from last month is supporting the SAP to SAP integration cases. And you'll see this in action in the demo shortly, but SAP teams provide some integration content about what event flows make sense or are enabled, should be enabled in an environment. And then you as the customer control those. And more of this integration content is going to be rolling out quite quickly over time here. And then in the coming soon section is the entire extension story. So customer and partner developed applications and extensions on BTP, including connecting with cloud integration iFlows, as well as the bidirectional integration with those other integration suite capabilities of advanced event mesh and event mesh are coming quite soon. Unfortunately, not there in time for this presentation or the upcoming tech ed demos, but quite soon afterwards. And now you'll know what it means when you see all the release announcements later. So let's start talking now about how you actually use this thing. As mentioned earlier, everything's connected out of the box by SAP from a technical perspective, but we still need you as a user of it to provide some information to us. And the first of that is, what is the grouping of application tenants that needs to take place? We know customer landscapes have many different application tenants, many different systems in them. They should not all have the possibility of communicating with each other. So to narrow it down, you make a grouping in the system landscape of your BTP global account, and these are called formations, these groupings. So in an example here in the bottom left, we can group together the production systems into one event sharing context and call this a first formation, and then group together the test tenants into a separate sharing context or formation. These formations aren't limited to production and test. They're an open concept you can leverage as needed. Maybe you separate by lines of business, maybe you separate by subsidiaries or regional boundaries. It's really a flexible concept you can decide how best to use. But once you've defined some of these sharing contexts or formations, you'll subscribe to the SAP Event Broker admin application, and then enable and configure the subscriptions between the various SAP applications or later to extensions as well. And a subscription just means you're selecting some event types coming from some event source and sending them to subscribing them into the destination system. And you can optionally also add filters here. Filters would let you narrow down the stream of events a little bit further than just by type and source. Maybe you have some DPP constraints. You need to make sure only data with a processing purpose can be delivered to a consumer, or maybe you have some other business requirements like only certain regional sets of data are relevant or certain cost centers or so on. So with that, we'll move on to the demo of an SAP to SAP event-based integration scenario. And the one I will show you here is some information being replicated from the SAP subscription billing application into an S4 cloud tenant. And this scenario isn't released yet. It will be, I think, very, very soon here. So I'll show it in some internal pre-production systems. So don't be confused if you see some minor differences here or there later. So we start out here in a BTP global account, and we'll navigate into the system landscape view here. And here we can see a whole pile of systems in this example, many different S4 tenants and subscription billing tenants. Again, just kind of emphasizing the need to do some grouping of those together, so you know what it is you're administering and where data should be moving. So we move over here to the formations. We see there's a couple already there. We'll create a new formation with some systems just for this demo. We just give it a name, and then we'll select the formation type, which is this eventing between SAP cloud systems. That enables the SAP Event Broker usage. And then we select a sub account here. And it's important to point out that this sub account only means this is the sub account where we'll do the event administration for this formation. This doesn't mean all the systems we put in here must be deployed or provisioned in that sub account or anything like that. No boundaries in that regard. Again, only saying where we'll do the administration work. Then we pick the systems we'll include. We'll pick an S4HANA Cloud tenant, and we'll pick a subscription billing tenant. And then move on to review, and then create the formation. And while this is being created, we see this synchronizing, which is mean the information is being propagated to the event broker to prepare all of the event flows. And we're navigating here into the details of the S4HANA Cloud tenant, and I'll show you the additional setup steps required on the S4HANA Cloud side. So we can go into the configuration here and see this AMQP gateway URL. We will copy that URL and then go into our S4HANA Cloud system and create a communication arrangement. The communication arrangement is still leveraged here because we want to leave with the S4 admin some control over what formations this S4HANA system is being connected to. So it's kind of the other side of the handshake, if you will. But when you do create this communication arrangement, which is this new SAPCOM 0892 communication scenario, you don't need to fill in all the trust information and all the rest of the configuration. All that's needed is to paste this URL here, which is just saying, I want this S4HANA Cloud tenant to connect to this particular formation. I'm authorizing the usage and the flow of events in that direction. Then I'll log out here because we need to log back in later as a different role. And we'll go back over to BTP and look at the rest of the setup. So from here, we'll just navigate into that sub account where we said we will do the event administration. And as previously mentioned, the next step here would be to subscribe to the SAP Event Broker admin application. So we do that by creating a new subscription to this Event Broker service with the standard plan. I already created it here just to expedite the demo. So we'll log in directly here. So now this is the event administration for this formation, and we navigate over here to see all available subscriptions. And what we're doing in the SAP Event Broker for you is we're looking at all of the different system types which are available there in this formation, and we're looking at all of the available integration content which has been provided by the application teams, and we're compiling the list of available subscriptions. So here we only see one because we only have one integration content between subscription billing and S4, and we only have one tenant of each in this formation. If we were to add multiple different S4 tenants into the formation, we would see multiple different available subscriptions, each going to the different S4 tenant, allowing you to control exactly which data is going to which tenant. So then we drill into this available subscription, and we can see here that 17 event types would be routed from this subscription billing tenant to the specific S4 tenant when we enable the subscription. Subscription is an overloaded term, so we have here the events are about some customer subscriptions to products, and the subscriptions I'm talking about here are event subscriptions about routing across the landscape. So in order to turn this on, all you have to do is enable it. And over there where you enabled it would be where you add any filters as required as well, specific to this path from the specific combination of tenants. And that's it. Now it's enabled. So we'll show some events actually flowing. We'll go into the SAP subscription billing application, and we don't need to worry too much about the business context here, but we're creating for a particular customer, we're going to create a subscription to a monthly subscription to some cloud storage product. So I'll be doing that here in the background. And again, the business context isn't really our focus here, but after we create this customer subscription to the product, what's happening behind the scenes is that the subscription billing application is firing an event saying this has been created, including in the payload, the information about what customer, what subscription, and so on are being transmitted. And we expect that the event will flow automatically to the S4 tenant because we've set it up already. And then that data is processed on the S4 side. And here it's kind of a replication use case. So what we see when we'll navigate through this link now, after creating this customer subscription, we'll navigate over to S4 and we'll see that a provider contract has already been created on the S4 side. So here we're going back into S4, logging in as the right user who has access to these provider contracts. And exactly as we would expect it to, we see the provider contract replicated already into this S4 system. And the interesting part is really all the stuff that you can't see, that this is happening behind the scenes and leveraging this SAP Event Broker and all of these event-driven architecture benefits. And then just to point out, there's one thing, additional piece I didn't show in this demo on the S4 side to actually consume the events in the relevant business application in S4, there's an additional communication arrangement in the familiar pattern in S4. But I just wanted to at least point that out so you know there's one extra step on that side to actually do the business consumption of those events. And that's the end of the demo. I have here a couple of resources you can take a look at later, just the Discovery Center and our help docs, as well as that industry standard cloud event spec to take a look at. And with that, we have a couple of minutes for questions, I think. So thanks everyone for listening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Davey, for sharing all this regarding Event Broker. There was one question on the chat, but it's only about what will happen with regular event mesh. Will it still be usable outside of integration suite as a standalone service? I did reply back to that. So in the end, and you can add something to this, but in the end, event mesh will move on the SAP integration suite and basically will not be available as a standalone service. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, so that's an area a little bit outside of my direct responsibility, but I know there's a strong focus on being non-disruptive to our customers. So we know the things you have in place, expect them to keep working, don't expect that they're pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah, exactly. There are no more questions in the chat, but I do have a few questions. And this is just curiosity regarding the events, for example, that Event Broker can handle. So you mentioned, for example, so you know how we have, for example, different types of events, as in being notification events, where you basically pass minimal data and you will have basically just like an idea of an object, or a data event where you will have a huge payload containing all the data that you need in order to maybe replicate that object in somewhere else. So I would imagine that in the case of Event Broker, it will handle both type of events, right? And it would just be a matter of yeah, maybe you can tell us something about that.
That's exactly it. So we're agnostic to what's inside the payload from the SAP Event Broker, but from an SAP strategy perspective, we do try to push in a direction here. Both types have their place, but these so-called business data events, where there's the actual object data in the payload, this is a pattern called event carried state transfer. That's a well-known pattern, and what we aim to do as SAP is try to put enough payload inside of those events that roughly 80% of the use cases are served without needing to call back to the source system to fetch the rest. There's of course variations and exceptions, but as a general guideline, we want to have payload in there, but not too much payload. We know a lot of examples. If S4 put in every field it had related to the object in its cascading chain, it would be a huge event, and there's almost no consumers out there that really want all of that information. So it's a little bit of an art to figure out what are the right context, and it's going to vary in some cases customer to customer. So we're also focusing at SAP on making these events extensible. So you'll be able to kind of extend and customize them as needed for your particular business case.
Fair. And well, if it's a data event, and given the amount of data that, for example, an S/4HANA object can have, like it can easily exceed those 5 kilobytes.
Oh, and exceeding the 5 kilobytes is expected. We have currently there's a total limit in the event broker that the maximum event size can be 1 megabyte. That limit is expected to be lifted soon. But as always, it's a fine line. You want to send enough data to avoid all these callbacks for processing efficiency, but you don't want to send too much data because it's just wasteful at some point. So yeah, we're trying to find the right balance there.
Yeah, we have an interesting question in the chat regarding queue topic configuration, such as, for example, only once delivery or recurring delivery attempts, similar to what we have in Event Mesh. What should we expect in Event Broker?
Yeah, great question. So fundamentally in Event Broker, we're operating at a different abstraction level. So here it's not like you get some dedicated message broker resources, virtual or physical, and you're configuring and using those message broker resources. We're working at an abstraction level above this, where we really just have an event platform. Here are the events which are available to you. So there's no knowledge of topics or queues or how we may be internally organizing the data. In fact, we're using large Kafka clusters internally to organize the data, but in a topic structure only we know or have access to internally. So we do provide some general standard qualities of delivery. So at least once delivery is the standard here, and delivery in order per business object is also the default standard here, which will later let be detuned. But yeah, so you're working here kind of on the realm of events, not on the realm of what are the internal details of some particular messaging infrastructure.
Okay, well, in the end, it's simplifying how you organize that, right? Now, you mentioned a very interesting technology there, Kafka. So Kafka allows for replay of events, right? Should we expect replay of events as part of Event Broker yeah?
Yeah, so not there in the current release.
Yep.
We only are using the Kafka mechanisms to provide this at least once delivery guarantee, and as well as the many consumer support and so on. Replay is very likely to be exposed outwards to consumers in the future as well. Some of the details of that are still being hashed out. So hard to say exactly when and in what form, but yes, that's something we are quite interested in taking advantage of.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like in the end, you could end up missing some events, right? And you might want to, yeah, reprocess something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that's the whole idea behind it, right? There's one more question here regarding monitoring, and I think is it alerting or altering of events in Event Broker? What should we expect regarding monitoring of events?
Yep. So I mentioned it very, very briefly there. We support an integration into SAP Cloud ALM. So you as a customer can come in and set up the monitoring in SAP Cloud ALM. And what's there in the first scope is all of the error events or unprocessable events are sent over to SAP Cloud ALM, and inside of SAP Cloud ALM there, you can build all the rules on alerting and various other things you need. That's definitely just a first step towards the customer-facing monitoring, which is there today. Much more is coming there in the next quarters too.
Okay, that makes sense. I think that answers the question regarding alerting of events as well. Now, when you started showing, and this is my last question, and this is just to understand a bit about how Event Broker ends up sort of deciding which events can flow from one system to the other. Just because, so when you were showing, for example, SAP subscription billing, I went to the Business Accelerator Hub and check out the different events that are available for SAP subscription billing. And I noticed that in the list where you were configuring the systems in the demo, there were only, I think, 17 events, if I counted well. But then like if you go to the Business Accelerator Hub, there are a lot more events, right? At least for subscription only, there are like 20 events. I don't know the exact number, but just to give you an example, and there are some others, right? Yeah. So my question is, Event Broker automatically or something magically knows like, okay, I support this exchange of events between these two systems then.
Yeah.
Is that how okay. Cool.
Yeah, so that's the integration content which the SAP teams are providing, because the SAP teams know what business scenarios they are enabling with these SAP to SAP integrations, and they know exactly which events need to be consumed for those scenarios. So they're making life easy for our customers here by not, providing an integration guide and saying, select these 17 events, but not those other ones, and configure everything. We're just saying out of the box, we know the business scenario, we know it can be enabled, then we let the customer decide if they want to enable it. And then the only other input the customer needs to give is not the fundamental, how do I set up a business scenario? They tune it through those filters to their own business needs. Because, again, maybe in the subscription examples, one S4 tenant is processing one country of data, another S4 tenant is processing another country of data. The customer can set that up through the filters, but the fundamentals of what is the business scenario, SAP is helping you out by defining out of the box for you.
Excellent. Well, simplifying integration between these systems, right? Not having to worry about it, but just happening. That's good. Cool. I think we can wrap it up here. So again, thank you very much, Davey, for sharing your knowledge and expertise in this session. I've learned a lot about Event Broker, which is, I know, a service that we will be listening a lot more in the near future. So yeah, looking forward to it. I also want to thank the viewer for joining the live event or the recording of this session. And thank you for all the questions that came through the chat. They were quite good. And yeah, just a reminder that there is plenty for everyone to learn during the TourFest. We're almost finishing the TourFest, but all the sessions for the TourFest have been recorded, so you can also visit sessions for other tracks and you can watch them all. So make sure to check them out. That's it. Thank you. See ya. Cool. So I've stopped.